So
You,
what's all this about? What's going
so
on in your world?
so basically, so I'm 37 in 38 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, one, Purple Banter goes through multiple. You were with me during one of our death periods, right?
Bro,
So
that was like you brought me in and I like had a mental breakdown.
yeah, so you went through one of our major death periods, and now I'm in the third death period in 2.5 years. So within that, the
Really?
biggest thing that and each death period's worse or less harsh as the last one, but at the same time just as critical. And so within all of that, just being said, the biggest problem that I've had doing what we're doing is feeling like I lose traction to what I really want Purple Banter to be
Uh-huh.
when I'm working and getting contracted out for other people, building other people's shows. Even if I love their show, I still feel like, oh, what I really hope this thing can be for what I hope it can be. We're still like losing ground on that every once in a while. So I'm like, you know what? I really like fitness tests and all these types of things. I tried to do a 45 hard, right? So like, what can I do with this in order to do it? So I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do 37 podcasts in 37 days.
Oh, I
One,
got
it's a test of myself. Two, it's a re-encountering all the people that have been impactful in my life up to this point, and especially like impactful to like what Purple Banter is and what I hope it becomes. Um, and then two or three would be the last thing of re-engaging not only our community but the other community that we have kind of adjacent to us, because when we're making content, making podcasts, I always am thinking, well, would these basically this list of 37 people, would they like what we're creating? And for the last 2 years I would go, some people would like some, like a very very small percentage of it. Most people wouldn't even care. What I hope happens in the next year and a half, everybody on this list would go, oh, I have like one or two things that I really, really like about this thing. And then
you. Yeah.
there's obviously 12 to 10 things that are like, that's not me, don't care about it. And that's good too. I don't want everybody to care about everything, because then that means we're missing the mark on nicheness and being truly different and all that type of stuff. So it's really an exercise. It's a reconnection. Allows me to easily force people to talk to me for a few minutes of the people that I love, and then just kind of like rolling from there a little bit, and reconnecting, and also kind of hearing where everyone's at and what they're thinking about and all that stuff.
I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche.
So how do you want me to introduce you here today, Craig? I always like It's always interesting thinking about who you really are. Certainly, like in my life, you're one of these 37 people in my life that have drastically influenced me, not only by well, most importantly, by just being a friend during interesting stages of life. Living out in LA during slightly lonely periods. During
Yeah.
you're a friend of mine that has always recentered me to remind me of God, and remind
Well,
me
that's good.
of why we live here and what we're supposed to do. I see your face pop up today. I'm like, yeah, it makes me like want to like read the Bible more, pray a little bit more, be a little bit better, all these types of things, right? We've both, experienced different levels of anxiety, depression together, and like fought through, and I think we experience those things very similarly.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
and then also we happen to be in similar industries a lot of the time, right? You're unbelievable editor, designer, businessman, you're just a very interesting guy, and like you're multifaceted. So it's like inappropriate to say who is Craig Doig. I'm like, you got like at least 10 minutes, like, and it would be easier to explain it in an hour, right?
I'm flattered. I'm surprised I made the list.
I'm
I
gonna have
will
her
say,
watch
out
us
of
right here.
everything you did say, the great irony is oh, we got baby walking out.
Take front seat right here. Um, but yeah, so what? What do you think? What kind of, where
I
are you
don't
at
know,
your
man.
headset?
It's funny you say that about God, dude, because I always laugh because I mean, to say you introduced me to Jesus would be wrong. You reminded me that he was there.
Sure.
I would say after all this time, that's a better metaphor for it, but you did. I mean, that's why I think it's funny when you're like, oh, you remind me to sinner and come back to God. I'm like, bro, I didn't even believe in God before I met you. Like, think about that.
And that's what being like brothers in Christ are. Right. And that's who, being a community of men and women that like care about their relationship with God, have great time periods to be able to like, hopefully sometimes be a mentor for someone during their period of darkness. But then also, I think what you find is the same people that you might technically like be a support system for at some point, you're going to also rely on that person to be a support system for you within
Right.
your, like everything's so cyclical. That's why
But what's nice is you can go to any city, anywhere, any town, and you can, not any, but you know what I'm saying, and walk into a place and you can find a brother in Christ.
right.
And almost everywhere I've been, what I found, since I started going to church is like, dude, I could go to, what's tonight? Monday, I go to church support group tonight at 5 or 6 of the churches here. I'd be like, I'm dealing with this. And 3 guys would just call off everything they were doing, like call their wives and be like, I'll be home in a bit. I'm gonna help this guy.
Right.
Like, whatever I need. And that's like mind-boggling when all of a sudden you realize that that's there. You're like, oh my God, like how much, like I have the largest network in the world. I've got like 1.2 billion of at least a million of that billion are decent people, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, it's a huge network.
It truly is. Yeah.
So
And
if
you
you
kind
can
of,
introduce me anyway, I would say, dude, just I'm happy with a guy who you brought to church. I mean, that's good enough for me. The rest of it's kind of goofy at this point. I don't know. I got my hands in everything.
so it's tough to start our conversation off because one, you have a child coming within the next like 10 days.
Yeah.
So we obviously
No.
connect
Weeks.
10 weeks. Okay.
Yeah,
You got
you
10
heard me
weeks.
wrong.
No, 10, no, no, I heard 10 weeks. You're right. I was saying 10 days, but yeah, 10 weeks. Um,
It's
you
not
know,
long though. It's terrifying.
10, that's so weird. You're like sitting there like fourth quarter, everything comes down to the line. I would say one of the interesting things about that 10-week mark, one of the things that we did, I think we moved in that 10-week part,
Me
right?
too. Right now, that's as a guy with anxiety, it's like, oh great, how am I going to deal with my anxiety? I'll just add the heaviest thing I can do onto my shoulders
Well,
and like focus.
so then as I'm sure you bought or rented a house that you were thinking about your child while you were doing it. You're like,
That's the
okay,
only thing we're thinking
we
about.
want our child to have a room and like all these things. And then it's like, well, we get into the room, we got to make sure we got either wallpaper up, we at least need a crib, all these types of things. This is the funniest thing. We got the whole glow sign that says Khaleesi, the family pictures around her.
Oh,
She still hasn't slept in there, bro.
not yet. Is that the thing?
So it ends up being such a weird element of this weird stress. I think it's a fatherly and certainly a motherly stress where you say, I want to like build a nest for this child and I want them to know that they have like space in our world and has a room in our home. And then no, it's like our 7-month-old child like still hasn't slept in her room. And, it's filled by grandparents and friends that come to help us out and all these other things. She could probably be in there like by now. But we always continue to have like different support structures coming in and like helping us out. So her room's still in the guest room.
Fair enough. I
Yeah.
mean, we're like all planned out for like the first 2 months of the baby's life. It's like Holly's mom's gonna be here, and then her dad will come like the weekend after, and then my mom will fly in for like a week and a half after that. And like literally, Holly's texted me. She's like, my sisters are asking when they can book time on our baby calendar, and it's like we got a Google Calendar for the baby. And I'm like, bro, this is more complicated than my calendar as a software CEO. I'm like, this is wild.
It's unbelievable.
She got meetings. She got Zoom meetings with like 18 people, like, damn. I wish I could book that many meetings.
A lot of, it's weird because I do think you're in the zone right now of actually dealing with the most amount of anxiety and stress as a parent that I've understood within this age. I think there's a huge amount probably when maybe the child's in high school or something like that, once they're getting in a car and driving. But the anxiety level will certainly that will drop like wildly immensely once your child's like breathing and his eyes open. You can start just loving on it. Then
Bro, that's
your
that's
tired
what
level will go up, but that's about it.
where I can only read like so many of these fucking books before I just like pop. I'm like, okay, like I'm trying to pretend what it's like. I mean, bro, are we into it yet?
We're
Are we in
recording.
it?
We're recording. Yeah.
Okay.
We've been recording. Your intro is the intro that like is just this long-winded thing.
Beautiful. All right. If this doesn't get edited, I don't mind. I got lots of crazy stuff I want to say.
Yeah.
But I will say this, dude. And this is a crazy. I'm very reluctant to tell people this because I think they'll look at me like I'm kooky. And you know me, I'm like, I was an atheist Buddhist when you met me, right? Like I was at the Kadampa Meditation Center. I'm like Zen Buddhist. I'm like, there is no God. We're one with everything. God is us, and blah blah blah. And like the idea of like visions or esoteric things or miracles and all this stuff, I'm like, like requires context and like discernment, right? You got to have a really keen eye for like what's going on and acknowledge reality. And I'd really push it away. But like, we spent 2 years trying to get pregnant. And 2 years ago, I'd say, well, probably like 6 months into us trying to get pregnant, I had a dream that was so vivid. I started telling people I had a vision because like I've never had a dream that was like, I didn't know if I was awake or what, but like in this dream, it's very like I could see it. I'm just like walking through this green field and there's like a golf cart, right? And I don't even play golf. I play golf now. I didn't play golf back then. So it's really weird.
There's no part in my mind that can see you golfing.
Bro, shot my best score yesterday off the freaking in between the pro tees and the white tees. It was crazy. But yeah, I've only been golfing for a year now. So I had this vision before I started golfing. So it's very weird. I saw a golf cart in this dream. And I'm like walking up behind it, and Holly's in the front seat. And this little like blondish, strawberry blonde girl turns around and is like, Daddy. And I like woke up and I'm like, I'm having a girl. Like God has promised me a girl. Like for real. Like it was surreal. Like, I mean, I felt like I was in it, and she hugged me. And all my anxiety just like dissipated. And it was like only a few times in my life have I felt that. And like the last time I felt like that was when I was being baptized on the border or on the corner of Hollywood and La Brea at Mosaic Church in Hollywood. I was like, oh, this is from God. Like this is something outside of me. This is not just a dream inside of me. So like, we're going through this, and Holly's a little stressed. I'm a little stressed, right?
Certainly.
And like we didn't get deep into it. Thank God we didn't have to do IVF, but we did like some stuff leading up to it. We are just doing all the little precursors, and we're like,
getting your vitamins in and all these things.
Yeah. And we did, turkey basters or whatever, whatever the heck they use. I mean, it looks when you're in there, you're like, is this science? Are we making this up as we go? I don't believe it. Like, they just send you into a room with like an old DVD player, and then they get a turkey baster. Now, we'll get her pregnant. You're like, okay.
I mean, that is science, though, right? Science is just science. Like, hey, like let's throw some stuff against the wall, even if it's your own semen. And you're like, wait, what's happening here?
You're like, we're gonna turkey baster it up there closer, and you're like, okay. I mean, it sounds right. Like, I can't say wrong. So
the theory is it seems tight.
Holly. So this is happening, and the whole time Holly's like wound up, and I'm sitting here and like telling her, I'm like, no, it's fine. We're gonna have a baby. Like, I'm not even worried. And we go in for the last time to do this like IUI thing. It's like it's the precursor to I whatever it is, IVF or whatever. And it's like,
well,
yeah, simple. Anyways, I go in. And I have that feeling as I'm standing next to her. Like the moment she conceives, I have that same like washing over me of just like pure love. And I walk out and I turn to her and I go, you're pregnant right now. And she's like, you can't know that. That's crazy. You're crazy. I mean, because she always thinks I'm crazy. Yeah. I was like, you're pregnant right now. And And I said, it's a girl. And I know it's a girl. I said, but maybe it's a boy. I don't know. I started second guessing that part. I was like, could be, could be. I mean, I'm not clairvoyant. I'm not seeing everything that clear. But I thought, the vision was pretty clear. And I said, you're pregnant right now. 2 weeks later, she's calling me. I'm on like a Zoom meeting for work. She's like calling me. I'm not seeing any of it. She walks in the door. I turn around. She's about to say something. I go, you're pregnant. She goes, how do you know? And I was like, I've known the whole time. Like,
you just didn't know. Yeah.
You just didn't believe. Like, bro. So I say all of that long-winded diatribe to say one thing. I have this sneaking suspicion when the baby's born that I'm gonna feel that peace, because that's the peace I feel. I feel that inside of me. Like, it's like this is a new chapter. Like, if I have 10 chapters in my life, it's like, okay, like chapter 4 or chapter 5, like we're somewhere in that like later middle half, lower early middle section. I feel like it's gonna help me define a little bit more who I am, and like take some of those rougher edges and like sharpen them, which will be nice, because like the last few years have been the least anxiety filled years of my life. Like,
Yeah.
And I've been working on myself, and I'm so excited to feel like, God can trust me with something like this.
Yeah.
Because before, I mean, when I met you, bro, like I was like on the edge.
Sure.
Of the opposite, I mean,
Yeah. Well,
I
that's
maybe
being,
like,
young and misguided and distracted, overwhelmed, and because I think you had the dream of what you're currently living in right now then,
yeah,
and not even all of it, right? But at the same time, it's so overwhelming to feel like single and getting older and not even having the person that you like love to then get married to and then hopefully have a child with. And it all feels like, do I have enough time for all of these different life goals, like life steps that I hope happen? And then again, now once you do it all, you're like, you know what? I could have just I could have probably just found Holly. We could have just gotten pregnant right away and like gotten married afterwards. Because once you find your person, you're like, I'm kind of cool with just get moving forward in life
yeah,
with
like
this
let's
person.
go.
And but you get blessed with getting the steps that you hoped for in a way, a little bit of the playbook that you desired. And I think the most special thing that happens once you have a child and you and your wife are sitting there with a baby, it's the first time you truly become a family.
Mm,
Right. There's so much of, you and Holly might go out to dinner and you're like, oh, it's family night or whatever. I speak like that. But then now it's like you have a child. You're like, oh my gosh, we're actually this unit now. And for the
yeah,
first time, you actually are like truly a family. And that's a interesting experience because we certainly have been blessed with like this new blanket or protection from God and different, it's as for a guy, it's way easier to negotiate business contracts when you have a baby at home. People look at you a little bit differently. And you also have that not overwhelming actually, like very intended and excited burden on your own heart to go, I have this thing that really I want to fight for this child. And then
right.
you look at your wife, you'll be like, oh my gosh, you're stronger than I could have imagined. When the maternal instincts come on and to the person that you like loved while they were a single person, and then you became married to them, and when they become a mother, it's it's also another like rebirth of a new relationship that you get with your significant other that's really exciting and beautiful as well. Yeah, you fall more in love with all these things, and it's I always laugh at Elof. I'm like, when we were in this 10-week out part, I was like, in 10 weeks I am no longer going to be like your favorite person. And was I ever even her favorite person with her mom and her sister and her brothers? Probably not. But I
Well,
had
no,
this idea.
we married way above our cut, right?
And
Like,
she's like, oh no, babe, no, I'm like, now I'm for sure like fifth on the list. And but what really happens is your heart just expands. It's kind of like the Grinch, where you're like, I have more capacity for love. It's a cool experience. I'm excited for you to get through it and just keep on walking forward. Um,
Dude, I love it. And to make an inappropriate joke, as I always do, I've been saying to my friends, I said, it's crazy I'm about to have a baby because the closest I was to a baby maybe before was drinking their adrenochrome at some weird Hollywood party with some
yeah, it's like,
some of those actors at Diddy's.
yeah, it's like I
Um,
never was able to see the babies that I ate,
yeah,
but
that used to. It's weird though to think that like as kooky as all those conspiracies and things are, like I met you in the context of Hollywood, and Hollywood is that weird to me. The things that I found myself like not engaged in, but like witnessed there are so surreal. And to meet you at that point in my life where it's like I'm questioning everything
yeah,
and like to just bump. I actually like I remember it. I text you and I said we met at David's birthday party. At
yeah,
his 34th birthday party. I turned 34 this year, which is interesting.
still a young man.
Not far. And I met so many people at so many parties in LA. And you were like, yo, let me give you my number, right? We're like doing this thing.
Yep.
I remember I texted you and you're like, let's go play skee ball and drink beers or something. We went to that skee ball place.
Yeah. We went down to I think Angel City
And
Brewing or something like that.
dude, we
Yeah.
were like broing it up. We're doing the skee ball. We're just drinking beers. We're talking about whatever girls, whatever the heck we're talking about.
Lots of life, lots of religion, all these politics has always been a central
It
of
was
our
politics,
conversation.
and I started to get a little anxious. Like I started having some anxiety because I hadn't drank enough alcohol yet, right? Because once you get enough in there, you don't worry about anything.
Yeah, it blushes everything up.
So I wasn't there yet, and I remember thinking, I said to you, I said, bro, this is gonna sound really weird, but like I'm kind of feeling a little anxious right now. I have like anxiety. And you just like your eyes lit up and you're like, bro, let me tell you about anxiety. Like, let me tell you about this story. And like I remember it like almost verbatim. You tell me this whole story, and then and I like take care of myself and I like eat good and like juice box, like, part of that clean eating thing. Like I'm like paying attention to what's going in my body. And I'm like, how can you drink though? Because like, you're like, oh, I used to get the scaries, but I don't now because like I take care of myself. So you can like handle a little more every once in a while.
Yeah.
Like you're like explaining it all to me. And then you're like, and then like vividly, you're like, oh, and by the way, like I also go to church. Like that helps a lot. And I like looked at you and I go, like Christian church? Like Christian church? And you're like, yeah, like Jesus Christ Christian Church. And I was like, what? And you were like, come with me tomorrow morning. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I remember that. But I find it so interesting, like that intersection of where we met, man. And I always wonder, I always wondered where you really were in your life at that point when I met you. Like I did for a long time. And I think only recently did I realize like we really did meet each other at similar moments.
Yeah.
And I think in my mind, you were like big brother.
Yeah.
At that moment. But now I see you, I'm like, oh, like we were a lot closer than I realized. We were looking for the same things.
Well, yeah, it's so interesting because you continually during that moment felt like you needed me, but you didn't realize how much like I needed you in that same time period. And what it was to me was that I had gone to the depths that you were at that time, and I had found my way out of those depths. But at the same time, thumbs up. But at the same time, you become very well aware, like during this path, that you still like it's cyclical. So anxiety is something that you manage. It's kind of weird because you forget once you're out of it, you kind of forget what the depths felt like, but you still manage the surface to make sure that like you don't go as low as you've been.
Yeah, until you have like a panic attack on a Tuesday morning randomly, and you're like, "Wait, oh yeah, I forgot about all that."
Right, and luckily you're like, okay, but I have the steps. I need to go walk outside. I need to make sure that I eat today. I need to drink a bunch of water. I hopefully don't have to get to the point where I maybe like worst case scenario have to like eat a Xanax or grab a beer to like, what
No,
I
no,
always
you can just call your mom for 6 hours before that.
Yeah, which you definitely should, right? Because I always call it like
Right.
you landing the plane a little bit, where
Yeah.
you're like, whoa, I need to like land this plane. I don't know how, but now I have like enough of the steps. And so I had just initially gotten out of a period of high levels of anxiety again in that cyclical format. It wasn't my biggest low, but it was another bout.
Yeah.
And I was in a good space though. And then
Yeah.
when I was able to meet you during your kind of a crisis type of moment, I go, you're a great reminder to me of like why these steps matter,
Right.
why you have to build a life of a certain level of structure in order to be prepared when life gets difficult, that it doesn't always fall apart. And so you help me also renew some of those structures where it's like, yeah, these do matter.
Yeah.
And to kind of just stick to them. So it was like, we were kind of like workout buddies in faith, and it was just
Oh,
like,
yeah. Oh, I mean, and I think in other aspects, like I wasn't physically active until I started hanging out with you, at which point, like I got into running trails and stuff.
yeah, you would be
I was madman.
sprinting down trails in Runyon Canyon, right? Or wherever it was in Los Feliz, where that was funny to always see. You'd pick up the phone sometimes while you're running down like those hills, and I'm like, you're running too fast down this hill with like
Bro,
not enough brakes on this sports car.
I'm knocking on wood now because I'm not saying I never will, but I never tripped one time ever. Ever. I never even lost my footing. I don't know what I was like. I mean, you want to talk about like, I think about like something I should never say on probably on camera, but when I was younger, I made a bad mistake and I drove a little bit when I was intoxicated, right? In England. This was
Okay,
years and years and years ago. I mean,
I've
I
heard
was in
this happens.
college
Yeah.
and like I crashed the car into an electrical box. And I've told people this story.
Okay, I
They
haven't heard
controlled
this
all the
story.
lights for the whole city. Like the whole city. This is a true story. And
How
I mean,
many like square blocks do you think went down?
so my town was 20,000 people, and there
No,
were
no,
probably
no, no
like
way.
60 or 70 lights, and they all went down. The whole town. It was like they had a control panel, right? And then they had a redundancy one, and I hit both. Like I went through one and like continued into the other. And like I don't know. I don't know if I've ever told you a story, but I'm like, this is like 15 years ago, right? Like, I mean, I'm in
Yeah,
England. I mean, it's crazy. Over 15 years ago, almost.
they can't get you.
No, they got me, bro. They put me in jail. I went to jail that night, and it
Okay,
wasn't for driving drunk, right? Because they could have taken me home and given me a summons and all of this. It's in England, all that.
right on then that you needed to go to the clink.
I tried to fight the police officers who were trying to help me, but check this out: the car skids, flips over onto its top in the water, like hits these boxes and flips upside down.
You're upside down in the water?
Bro, I'm upside down in the water, wasn't wearing a seatbelt. I come
It's on
to,
the hood.
bro. I'm gonna relate this all back to not tripping in Runyon Canyon.
This is you would have had like a Kennedy death.
I had no seatbelt on. The car flips. I don't remember anything but just standing on the roof of the car, just like looking at stuff, and I'm like, bro, I'm like completely fine. I like kick this guy's like trying to get in the window. I kick out the window and I like climb out. And at that moment, like I was kind of like, I'm fucked. I can't even run. Like I'm too drunk to run. So I reach into the car and I just pull a beer out and I sit down by the car and I just wait for the police and the ambulance. I was like, I'm done. Because this guy's like, I called an ambulance, and I'm like, okay,
Because you probably also, I would imagine, you probably want to get checked out by the ambulance a little bit, even though you're
bro,
feeling
they
okay.
came in, they were like, you might have a bruised rib, but you're like 100% fine. Like you're fine. Like there's literally nothing wrong with you, except, you've got a blood alcohol level of like 4.0, right? And I'm like, oh shit. And the cops come in, the EMT moves to the side and the cop comes up and he's like, I'm taking you to jail. And I'm like, do you know who I am? I'm gonna fight you, right? Like I just like I didn't swing.
Your ego is just on 10 for no reason.
No, because I was drunk and I felt invincible because like just like running down that hill, like even though so much was out of my control, nothing went wrong. Right. Like I think a man without such crippling anxiety and like stress and depression like I had at that moment probably would have woke up and found God. Instead, I thought I was God. I was like, oh, look at me. I'm invincible. And I just kept self-medicating, treating whatever for another, 10 years, whatever.
You
But
know,
like,
that's why I have such weird empathy, and also it makes my heart go to my stomach when I see like young men with that get an exorbitant amount of money very
yes.
young, and they also like mainly in sports where you like, okay, this person has a ton of money, they have a crowd that's screaming their name with the jerseys on, and you can tell when they're acting reckless in their life, and you
Mm,
go, oh, it's so scary because you're like, this might take a second for this guy to wake up. And I truly believe the higher you go a little bit, the farther that you fall. And
yes.
it just like makes my heart like, still even thinking about it, it's a weird feeling. I'm like I want God to get to you like as soon as possible, to just like turn that spark on for you can, one, like humility is a huge thing that I think all men have to wake up to. I don't
Right.
think you just I've always felt like I had some level of humility, but I definitely know that I've lost it before. And I've gotten into that space where I'm like, I couldn't care less. And so then if you think about like you're driving a Bugatti and everyone's shouting your name and you're still acting like an asshole, and it's like, oh, this is a scary one.
Yeah, and
um
what really what piles onto that is kind of what I dealt with after was like, not only like do you have to like overcome your ego and find humility in those moments, you also have to overcome the shame that comes with figuring out who you are and like becoming a real man, right? Like
yeah,
that's like almost as hard as suppressing your ego as like dealing with all of the shame for how you acted, how you treated people, how you were reckless, like how you put people's lives in danger, like I mean, or just and just little things that we did that are so silly, and it's like, you
that were
know,
very like there that are actually disruptive for your
and
soul,
that's
and you
boys
don't
to
even know it.
25, man. That's us to 25. We're boys. Like I don't feel like I don't feel like I started to house my ego until I was like 27.
And a
Finally
bit
put a little cap on that bad boy.
and a big reminder of that, like when I would say that those actions are distancing you from God, it's not God distancing himself from you, it's you distancing yourself from God. And so where once you have that ego death, you go, well, how could I even, so many people are like, I can't go into a church, I would burn. It's like, well, your soul's gonna light on fire. And it's gonna actually be, it could be a scary scenario. It could feel weird. It makes you feel maybe a certain level of anxiety and all these things.
I
But
went through that. I feel that.
and but it's the thing is it's you now dealing with that shame and also realizing that God doesn't have that shame for you. You just have that shame
Right.
for yourself in God's presence. So
Yeah.
you can get right with God actually immediately, but it's going to take you time to get right with
Right.
yourself in order to feel like value for God, which actually that isn't a real thing, but it is also, but it's a true human emotion that our soul goes through like during that period. It's a judgment day on earth. And you're like, oh, this is a weird one.
It's to kind of go back to what you said, it's Sicilic, dude. It's wild. It's wild. Like, I mean, I love Christians, dude, because they're just like so goofy. Like, I call them. I knew a guy in LA. He used to call them churchians. He's like, they're churchians. You're a Christian, Craig. We're out here on the street. We're helping homeless. We're feeding people. We're doing this, whatever it is. Like
Sure.
when you're in that moment, he used to be like, don't listen to the churchians. But I love their language. I love everything about like the kooky, like polite, oh, that's just a season, right? You're just going through seasons. We have all these different seasons. And I'm like, bro, the problem with Christianity is like you can get 4 winters in a row. Like it's not like, you can get 4 summers in a row. Like, I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to the seasons. I agree they're there, but like, you know, I find it funny how we're talking about all that, and it's just like you think you put it to bed, and then it comes, to just jump up in a moment. You'll be like driving a car, and like someone cuts you off, and you like are opening the door
Yeah.
to get out, and you're like, whoa, 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 I gotta get on the way. Hold on,
Yeah.
but you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you're ready. Like I was like, I'm not even carrying, man. Like I'm about to take this Sharpie to the, to the guy's dome, and you're like, you're like, what, you're just lost in it. Or you'll like find yourself like rehashing stuff that you dealt with like 10 years ago. Right. Or when I
There'll be
first came
times
to
in life
Vegas,
for you, you don't even remember until 10 years later. You're like, whoa, that's actually something I need to deal with.
right? I mean, I find like, I always found it weird that Catholics like confess, right? I always thought it was so crazy, this idea of confession. And then I found confession in men's groups. And I was like, oh, confession's really powerful. Like, it's really powerful to like say this out loud. Like, it is so powerful to go to like an AA meeting and just say things that no one's going to repeat. Just get them off your chest and like to just give them to God and just let them go. Like, I mean, there's so much power in like acknowledging it. And what's nice is when those things kind of circle back, you're like, hold on, I like gave this up. Like, it's gone. Like, I mean, like I'm rehashing it right now for a moment, but like I already gave it to God. I'm good. Like we're past this. Like we're so far beyond this. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice when you're talking about structures. It's like to have that when those things kind of do crop up. You're like, oh shoot, I don't think I realized I did that back in college or whatever. It just comes to you. You're like, oh, ooh.
Yeah.
And you can't text them and be like, my bad, 18 years later. Like,
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, isn't it weird too, now that you have a streak of peace within your mind and spirit and soul? It's also weird to sometimes think back on your times when you're in like the crosshairs of it. And they'll, as weirdly as it is, almost masochistically, you'll sometimes like be like, oh man, there was an element of me that like worked out harder, like developed
yeah,
like more rigorous structure. You almost weirdly are like, I want my soul to open back up to then get as good, but you're like, no, remind you, like I was in a horrific space. I was fighting for air. I was literally trying to breathe. So that's why I was doing all that stuff and getting back to normal. And now it's more about, I think, in my current mind mentality is more of trying to weather the storm and not always have to be so rigorous with everything, even though this is a season for me of getting back to rigorous behavior because I know the value components of it so much.
right. That's called that prefrontal cortex development phase, right? It's before that ego gets housed.
Yeah.
It's a different world, I mean, it's weird when you step out of your 20s into your 30s and it's like actually being born again. I think that I talked to a lot of friends who are Christians, who aren't, who don't have faith, atheists and stuff. And they say the same thing. It's interesting how you step out of childhood into adulthood around 30. Because you think when you're like 10, you're like, oh, shoot, like 18-year-olds, man, they're so old, 21-year-old when I'm an adult. And it's like, by the time you're in your 20s, you get into that weird like ego or nihilistic or whatever weird phase you're in. And then you hit 30 and you're like, oh shit, I could be here another 50 years. Oh my God. Like there's a whole life. Like not only am I might not be invincible, but like I might also be here though. Like that's a whole nother thing you kind of like come to terms with. I think you and I were doing it together.
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah.
a brief moment there in Hollywood, like coming to terms with like, okay, like we're both going to live in a house full of dudes chasing like, entrepreneurial dreams, like a little bit of partying, a little bit of fun, a little bit of crazy stuff. I'm not never going to say on camera ever. But like knowing that there's only so much of that you could do and not knowing when your kind of runway is going to run out. And I think ours ran out at the same time. It's like, okay, I would like a wife. That'd be nice.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe first I'd just like to be stable in like my own place. That would be really cool. Like
Right.
just to like I had money, but like I didn't have stability. Like I could have had my own place, but like it's gone every night. You know what I mean? Every Friday night, like I'm digging the hole with everyone else. Like, and you're like, there's like some vague feeling of kids or something, but like there's like this other feeling of like, I would say like this, like my grandma passed before I moved to LA, but like I felt like at that point in my life, I started to be like, I just want to be someone my grandma would be proud of.
Right.
Right. Like I love my mom, my dad, I want them to be proud of me, but like I want someone like my Southern Belle grandma could be proud of, like the kid who carries her groceries in from the car, you know, and like puts them away and is like, do you need anything before I leave? Like, I want to be that kind of like strong or like stable. And like,
Well, isn't it weird when you start to realize how, in a weird way, culturally, how like, in a sense, the only word I can think in my head now right now is like reckless, how reckless it is to be a stable man.
yeah.
And like how, like, I look at a stable guy that has all of the things tweaked and I go, oh, dude, you're like a badass. Like
Bro,
you are like
rebel.
holding so many. Yeah, you're a rebel. You're holding so many things together. You have so many things you're accountable to, and you have time to actually attach one or two other things. And you're like, I have this. Like when I see a guy with like 6 or 7 kids, I go, you're different, bro. Like
No.
you have a pack. You
Right.
and be, you know, a 20-year-old man looks at a guy with 2 kids and goes, what a loser. Like
Yeah,
he
what a
just
loser. You got
like look
laying
at how
guy
much
tied
look
down.
he gave up. That guy gave up. And what actually happened is that guy stepped in. He
No
stepped
kidding.
into what real like fears and real accountability and real what I think like masculinity and manhood is built for. You know, like that guy what is I don't know if I have the book here. But there's a book called Wild at Heart.
Mm,
And what I love so much about that book is it is the guy who's writing it is talking about growing from being a young reckless man to a guy who is a father and a churchgoer and all these things. And he talks about how like God needs more of you, like you young reckless man. God's asking for more of you. There's this huge spiritual warfare fight happening. He wants the type of guy that like gets cut off on the freeway and his thoughts initially are like, I'm gonna jump out and beat the out of that person. And now he doesn't want you to even think that anymore or like experience that energy,
he knows it's coming.
he wants people that are like protectors and what ends up happening like within this
He wants
book.
that deep breath, right? The guy who can just take a breath
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he knows it's coming. I mean, even Jesus got a little angry once or twice,
Well, he
right?
talks about how when you use that the same energy in the right way, there's actually this beautiful journey that God will take you on. And a lot of people go, well, it's boring to be a Christian. It's like, no, like there's more adventure to being a Christian and to being devout than you could ever imagine. And that instinct that you need, that masculine instinct, that testosterone injection that you need, that's going to still turn on in many different ways. You're just going to use it
Right,
for the value of a whole and not like just for yourself.
bro. Like becoming a Christian was like going to Hogwarts for me, dude. I was like, there's like some magic, crazy stuff going on in here, right? Like when you add that like layer of like metaphor and esoteric value system, and you kind of like start to like build out this like you know your kind of map of meaning, like you get to play in so many other weird spaces you never thought you would, and you like you almost get to become counterculture. I mean, well, nowadays very counterculture in the US to be a
100%.
Christian, which is like I think which is what scratches my itch because I used to be a progressive liberal. Now I'm like a conservative Christian to some degree. I mean, like I'm a loving guy. I'm like pretty chill. Like, I mean, on the social side, people are always like, oh, so you're conservative Christian. Are you pro-choice? And I'm like, I'll let God deal with that. That's like not my realm, bro.
Yeah.
Like I can't pass judgment. I was like, I don't know. I said I used to be super pro. I don't today I'm super anti, but like you do what you want. Like
Well, then again, you always have to remind yourself that like God put us on this planet with no rules. Like I could go strike my neighbor across the street and God wouldn't put up some weird stop in my hand
no,
and not let me do
no,
that. He's like,
no, and I'm not, and like it's not.
I will let you do that. So that's a lot of the times our rules within specifically our country, if it's going to be on the foundation of God's principles, like you can do what you want. And there's going to be some elements of that, but there is a few really sticky gray area ones where it's like, hey, the reason a murderer needs to go to jail is that that person's getting in the way of other people's like peace and livelihood.
Yeah,
And that's where it gets confusing on like the birthing topics and stuff like that. Cause you're like,
yeah,
well,
but
there's a lot of conversation there, but that's okay. That conversation will never end. And that's
But
why
to
I'm
dial
always
it back, because I think we talked about this last time, but to dial it back, it's like being in the Christian space illuminates all of these like new battles and topics and things that just have so much more substance and like are so much more fascinating. And it's like, you know, like I said Harry Potter, it's like, the devil is Voldemort and like I can go fight him, right? Like, I'm gonna die. Like I'm definitely gonna die. I'm like I'm not Christ. It ain't happening. But like I like that like mentality. I like that like when I was a kid, I didn't have that. I was such like a angry little kid, when my parents got divorced, like going through that whole thing. Like I had a very brief moment of childhood and then it was just like done. And like I see all these little Christian kids and I used to make fun of them. I'm like, look at these little nerds. They're like, I've got the power of God and anime on my side. Right? Like you're like, what is this? And then you get older and you're like, bro, that's kind of fun. Like I'm kind of having fun in this space. Like I like being good against all of the craziness and the chaos and like the hate that I find day to day in my life. And like what I like even more is like when I'm doing this, it's like again, like I'm gonna take it back to Harry Potter. It's like you're walking through the street and you like see another wizard and you're like tip the hat. You're like, hello, fellow Christian. You can just see it in their eyes. You're like, I know what's up, right? And you're like fighting this, like all you're really doing, and not to sound like a kooky Christian, but like to dial it back to like even maybe a more like secular way of looking at it. It's like, bro, I joined a club where like I'm combating all the evil in the world day to day, like as hard as I can. Like every day I go to war with like anger and stress and anxiety, and I get to like do that, and it's so fulfilling. Like I'll be in like a gas station and someone's like turns around to me and goes, can you believe this fucking line? Oh my God. They've ruined this. They've ruined this whole thing. It's all gone to shit. And I look at them, they're going like, can you believe it? And I'm like, yeah, I can. I mean, I'm not angry about it. I'm sorry, buddy. And you just look, it just like catches them off guard. It's like, I'm not rising to it. Or like, or like, bro, you see a mom like stuck on the side of the road with a little kid like changing a tire, and you just stop your car and you just do it, and like you just feel like you can be a force for good. Like I like that, and I feel like
you are the resistance, like doing that move.
Okay,
right?
Alex Jones, slow down.
right. Yeah.
No, but like I enjoy it. I think like who doesn't want that magical kind of like feeling in their life from day to day, like they're fighting like this like spiritual battle to like save people from hating themselves or like hating each other. Like I mean, and you don't really have to do it. You like use the force, or you like use the magic, or whatever. Use the Holy Spirit.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, if you just lead with love, like it's weird how it like breaks through all these spaces. It's wild.
Life's so dope. I mean, dude, you know how many cool places I've had dinner now? Like, you know how many people I've met that are just like doing things that I can't believe that I get to be a part of, like in these spaces. And like, I mean, my favorite people, and I can't out them here on any podcast, but like I have friends who are like artists who are like super famous, who are like, don't worry, man, I'm doing it all for Jesus. And you're like, holy crap, like you're huge. Like you're huge. Like it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna say it out loud. I feel like I can get to them. Just give me a chance to like, and you're like, you can tell it ain't about the money. They're like living in a 1-bedroom apartment, right? They're worth $100 million. And they're like writing, they're like writing and whatever, creating art, whatever it might be. Like, and you're just like, I'm like, whoa. I'm like, that's cool. Like, how would I ever get to engage with those people? And it'd be meaningful. Like I met a lot of celebrities or famous folks or rich people out in LA, but like, bro, you want to talk about dead inside? Holy, it's like, it's no fun when there's nothing there. It's like you meet them and it's like the first thing they do is offer you drugs or alcohol, right? Or like, let's go find women or whatever you want, right? It's LA. I mean, whatever you want. I mean, it's weird.
I felt
that's their personality.
I felt more overwhelmed lately with the burden of Los Angeles. Because like there's just such a lack of faith, and there's a huge lack of hope. All these people have these weird aspirational dreams, but there's no faith or even hope, not only in a creator and a God, but like in a better world and a better version of themselves. it is a burden. And like luckily I've recently moved to Orange County, so I'm surrounded more with like wow, there's actually families down here and like all these types of things. But LA is still in a very, very brutal spot. And thank God, like I've been able to, have an amazing wife and then, friends come in my life before meeting her to kind of bridge that gap because it gets extremely lonely and burdensome when you do have faith out here.
Right.
Because it's just not all around you. And I'm sure there's a different type of burden in smaller communities when everybody seems like they're faith based, but they're still struggling with all their normal life things. But LA, it does feel like you're at the front lines of. You're actually not even at the front lines. You're behind the lines.
Yeah, bro. That's what I used to tell people. I'd come home. My mom's like, I'm so happy you've like come to faith. And I was like, it was pretty easy when you literally live in hell for 4 years. Like when you like cross the threshold, you like come across that line and all of a sudden like you're like, everything's on fire all the time. It's hot. Everybody's mean. They all want to like use you and like drain you of your creative energy and like give you nothing for it, right? And it feels like I was there for an eternity. I was like, I went to hell. Like, I mean, like
there's versions of it. You can taste what it must taste like.
Oh my God. Hell to me and like the best metaphor would be like sitting in a room with 100 people and being the only one sentient. Do you know what I mean? That's what LA feels like. It's like sitting in a movie theater and you're watching this movie and you're having a good time. That's like a panic attack. Like all of a sudden the third wall's broken. You're like, oh God, I'm alive. I'm watching a movie. You look around, you turn to the guy next to you and you go, yo, man, is it just me or is this movie crazy? And the guy just looks at you and he goes, uh-huh. And just like goes back and you're like, oh, he's not there. None of these people are here. Like they're all just like, I'm like, bro, are you seeing this is the craziest thing I've ever seen? And and everybody's just like, yo, man, I'm just trying to watch this movie.
And it's crazy because, me and you are the type of people, the way that we've met, like we can be having a beer at a crazy party and we're going to start talking life, politics, and faith in the middle of it all.
Oh God, stop me. Like what else will we talk about?
There's so many times in Los Angeles when I'm at a party and I don't go to Mini anymore, but I, still have to frequent them every once in a while to show face and build business and all these things. But one, having someone that wants to talk Jesus is pretty darn rare. But sometimes I'll just settle for like a simulation theory guy.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Where I'm like, at least we're talking about something. Like I can't get there.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
bro, can we like, man? Dude, I'm 100% on the same page. I felt the same. I feel the same way, and it's the same here where I'm at on the East Coast. I don't think it's any different. I mean,
it's life.
I feel like the East Coast. They're like, yeah, we lost our faith like 200 years ago, bro. Like, they're like, at least those new atheists.
We left it on the Mayflower.
Bro, it's surreal. Like go up to Maine and like Maine is like it is one of the most stunning, beautiful states ever. But like they have the highest rate of non-believers of any state in the country, right?
Godless, yeah.
And it just feels hollow. Like you go into places and they're like, I like in LA, it's like at least the guys who work at Lucifer's Pizza probably are Satanists, right? No, I'm sorry, guys. I love their pizza, dude. But but they like commit, right? You go into LA, you go to Maine, you'll go to like Satan's Pizza Joint, and you walk in, they're like, "Hello, life is meaningless. I'm not gonna give you any like joy or or even hate, like nothing. Like it's just dead." But
they just want to feel
something here sometimes. Sorry, Maine. I love you. You're beautiful.
Oh my gosh, what was I thinking?
But what else would you talk about? Like, what else would you talk about at these parties, dude? I do. I was at a party with David. No one knows who David is. You know who David is.
They'll meet him in this series. He's my first friend in Los Angeles.
Oh, good. Reddish. Dude, we're at this party. I'm chilling out. I'm feeling really smooth, comfortable, having a good time, which is rare for me, right? Like when I'm out in social situations. But I was lubricated. And I'm talking to this German woman. She's like a German artist, and she's like a hardcore atheist. And we're sitting there, and she said something. This is like 2 weeks after I started going to Mosaic Christian Church. She goes, so blah, blah, blah. What do you do on the weekends? And I was like, well, lately I've been going to church. And she's like, church? She's like, so you believe in God? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'm like thinking, I'd say I'm agnostic. Like maybe I believe in God. I don't know. I'm going to a meditation center too. I was still a Buddhist at the time. I was doing both.
You have to play that hand. You knew immediately you had to like show her that deck. We're like,
I'm
I'm still
also an
meditating.
atheist Buddhist, and I'm a maybe doing this. And she was like, and she felt I was wishy-washy. She's like one of those predators. She like sunk in. She's like, okay, Mr. Maybe Christian, not Christian. She's like, do you know how I relax at night? And I'm like, no. And she's like, I read Christopher Hitchens because it reminds me not to believe in all these delusional fantasies. And like, she was just like, do you want to like come back with me to my house to another party after this? And she like held out a pill. And I was like, I'm good.
Like,
I'm good. David, like,
are you Morpheus? Like, what are we
I know,
talking about?
I was like, oh my God, dude, I would have been the adrenochrome donator that night, I think. I was like, oh God, I was like one step away from meeting the cabal. I love these jokes. By the way, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I just love it. I mean, how can you not love reading about this?
I definitely, I am a conspiracy theorist now. Like, I'm willing to like I have to be honest with people. Like, the reason I'll say I'm a conspiracy theorist because I love learning about them, and some of them hit. But
maybe I am then. I mean, I love learning about them, but does that make me one? Like, if all you do 70% of your day is read about conspiracy theorists on Twitter, does that make you a conspiracy theorist? I've never written anything though. I've never responded. I just read them.
I do stay like listening and watching stuff.
I've never affirmed.
You bring up an interesting point though in LA, and it's gotten increasingly worse. The amount of overbearing amount of drug use out here is unbelievable. The new introduction of ayahuasca and now like microdosing mushrooms.
No way. People are doing ayahuasca out there.
Dude, I have multiple friends that do ayahuasca quarterly.
Whoa, slow down, buddy.
I always thought ayahuasca was like one of those things that you did like once in your life, maybe twice.
Yeah.
I know multiple people that do it 4 times a year.
Yeah, well, they do it until they meet God, at which point they'll stop doing it.
They always come back.
I don't know why else you would take ayahuasca other than to like open your mind to the universe. And once you do, like, I feel like maybe they just got to lean in. They got to commit after you do the ayahuasca. And then you go, okay, there's probably a God. And you like, don't need to do ayahuasca anymore. That's what I always thought it was. I guess
I always thought it was like a one and done thing. And
that's what I thought.
Who knows? But it's between the quarterly ayahuasca and the microdosing shrooms and every single person that does that, if you talk to them and you're like, hey, like, what's up? They'll at some point in that they'll tell you they're sober. And then they also do. And then the next big thing is there's so many individuals doing ketamine treatment.
Ketamine, bro, the ketamine thing. It's
and I'm
wild.
Like, we're talking about like really heavy drugs. I get I get that they're natural, but whoa, bro.
Ketamine's not natural.
Ketamine's not natural, but like the shroom stuff, that's okay. It's natural, but dude, this is heavy stuff.
Weed, shrooms, ayahuasca, okay, fine, plants. But ketamine is a horse tranquilizer. It's synthetic. Don't tell me it's all natural. Like they're like, what are you talking about?
I thought that was ivermectin.
I know ivermectin is worse than
a
ketamine,
a dewormer. That's right.
A dewormer. And I'll have you know it's more dangerous than ketamine. No, ketamine. So I have a scary ketamine story. I never would touch it. Like, I mean, my brother died of a drug overdose when I was younger. So like hard drugs were never interesting to me, right? Like I was terrified of stuff like that. And I was in college and I had a really good friend. She was just like, you know, she's kind of wild, but she was like kind of sheltered as a kid. And like when she came to art, you know, to art university over in England, she was like ready to like cut loose, right? This Russian girl, she was just like, you know, she'd been like, you know, boxed in. So she like
pent up, ready to rock. Yep.
Bro, we're going to the club one night. It's called Student Union there. They've got like a bar at the college in the quad, right? And that was like common in England. I don't find that so much here. You have like bars on campus, but not like sanctioned debauchery.
I don't think you can even really sell alcohol on a lot of campus. Even the
no, you can sell it in England. You sell it in the lunchroom. They convert the lunchroom to the club at night. It was crazy.
It's a way to do it,
bro. It was wild. Yeah, sometimes we get a beer at lunch, right? It was wild. So in the quad of the university, so we're there and we're walking, and like I didn't even know what ketamine was. I had no idea what it was, and
Because now we're talking 15 years ago, right?
Yeah. So this would have been 17 years ago. So it would have been like, no, it would have been 17.
You were on the cusp. I hadn't heard of
17, 18.
ketamine until 5 years ago. Man,
17.
maybe 10. But anyways,
I was 17 in college. Like, I mean, I went to college young. So I should tell you about my fake ID sometime. That was hilarious. But I used to have a photocopy. But anyways, so I'm 18 or something. We're there, we're standing outside the club. She turns to me and she goes, I just did a bump of ketamine like in the bathroom. She like gone into the bathroom and come back out. And I was like, oh, okay, like what's ketamine? And she was like, I feel like I'm 2D. And I'm like, okay, that's of no help to me. Like, what's ketamine? I'm 2D. I'm in Super Mario. And I'm like, okay. And then like all of a sudden her nose, like both nostrils just start bleeding. And I like panic. I mean, blood's coming out of her nose. My brother had died of a brain aneurysm. And I didn't see him like that, but I know that's what happened. His blood came out of his nose, his ears, and he died. Like that's what happens when you have a massive aneurysm. So she just does that, and her eyes just go whoop into the back of her head. She like goes to fall back, and I like catch her. And like I don't know anything about ketamine. So like I don't even know where to start. Like I don't even think I was calling it ketamine. I was like, she had chamomile, you know, she's like, she's dying. Like I'm like, I don't know. So I like grab her and my other friend grabs her and we like run her to the bathroom and I send her friend to like go call the ambulance. I'm like, I don't fucking know what to do. And we get her into the bathroom and she's just like hanging over the toilet. Finally, she like snaps and like she just throws up. Right. And I guess now I know it's called K-holing. I don't know what a K-hole is, but she like K-holed. I still don't know what it means. I assume it's what she just OD'd. I don't think it was a K-hole. I think it's like a pure OD. And she like sits up and she goes, there's only one way to solve this problem. And she reaches into her bag and I assume she's pulling out more ketamine.
cocaine.
Pulls out cocaine and just bumps a line of coke and just snaps up. She's like, don't call the ambulance. Don't call the cops. Like, I'm just going to go home and sleep.
Got to balance out, land the plane.
And I was like, and at that moment, I was like, bro, like it just, you're saying like how wild drug use has got. When I hear people talk about like microdose and ketamine are doing it, I'm like, bro, back then, that was one of the most horrifying things. I was like, ketamine's like hard drugs. Ketamine's like heroin. Ketamine's like crack. Like, I mean, you can't just be doing ketamine. And now it's just like commonplace. And like, but I think back to that moment and I'm like, how did we get to in 15, 17 years from like, it's okay to smoke weed. I went to an art college. Like, it's okay to smoke weed. I didn't smoke weed. I tried to smoke weed one time and it didn't work. Right. I mean, I now know subsequent, like later in life, I know what it's like to smoke some weed, but like, you know, a couple of years later, I find out, but like, the idea of like that being the gold standard and now kids are like, yeah, I pop a Zanny, do a little line of ket, and then like I drive to the club. And like that is like baseline. It don't make no sense.
It's so normalized. It is unbelievable. My first experience with someone on ketamine, and I probably have been around a ton of people on ketamine now, because if you're out in Los Angeles, many people are on it, like a lot. I would say 30 or 40% like use it regularly, which is pretty wild to think. But so my first introduction to it, which I had never even heard the name of it until this point, we were in San Francisco. One of my friends brought this girl that he had been on a date with to our house, and we were having some friends over. We were watching a movie, and so she's sitting on a couch, and this was their first date. And she looks at him and she was like, hey, I'm kind of like slipping into a K-hole and I'm going to just like sit on the couch here. And we both look at each other. We don't know what a K-hole is. I'd never heard of that term in my life. And so I'm a talkative person. I'm like, what's a K-hole? Like, let's talk to me about it. She's like, you've never heard of ketamine? And I'm like, no. And so my buddy's like, I've never heard of ketamine. And we're like, when did you take it? And she was like, oh, I took it halfway through dinner. And he was like, wait, what? Like you took it halfway through our first date? Like that's kind of weird, I would say. And she just like slowly just kind of like zonked out and fell asleep on our couch for I don't know, like 3 hours, maybe 2 hours or something
in the
like
middle
that.
of a day.
It was like, I mean, it was at night. It was at probably 8 p.m. or something, but it was,
Bro, in the middle of a date.
yeah. In the middle of a day.
Bro, how can you not like, okay, hear me out. Like, I get that a lot of people right now are like microdosing these drugs because they're trying to like sort out their lives, right? But
Ketamine
like,
therapy is looked at as like a form of prayer.
bro, I would advise just sorting your life out without the drugs and not risking it, of course, right? That's what I think that's probably the best advice there. But like, bro, how I feel so much compassion and sympathy for the people who feel like they have to use these because like how bad must your life be to use a horse tranquilizer? Like what they give horses before they give horses surgery. Right? Like how bad does your life have to be where you want to like take mushrooms and like feel the force of like mold and like death and decay like overcome you in like some kind of acidy trip. It's like to just like feel something. And it's like I just feel so much compassion for these people and like I try not to judge them because I like you. I know a ton of people using these therapies and using microdosing to kind of get by, but like ultimately, like I've been high a couple times. I feel higher now than I ever have, like sober for 7 years, right? Like completely sober almost. Like, I mean, shit, I kind of got a little drunk on my honeymoon, but
Which you
that's because
should.
I thought sake was closer to wine than it was liquor, but I learned that day.
Well, it's so
Um,
funny, people will take a drug because they want to feel something, but really what you're doing is turning feelings off.
that's right,
The
dude.
scariest,
You're taking a tranquilizer,
the boldest thing you can do is actually go sober because
bro.
then you start to feel everything. And you want to talk about like a psychological trip. Try
Bro, I've
going
been on it for
sober.
7 years. I don't even know. Like, I mean, I've like I'm one of the few people who have like level 10 anxiety panic attacks who's never taken a Xanax. I don't even know what it's like. I'm more scared of Xanax than I am panic attacks because like I've seen what it does to people and I'm like I'd rather be on the edge of death in my mind, right? That when you have those existential dread moments, than not feel anything, whatever that feels like, because I don't know what it feels like because I've never felt it.
It's nothing.
Like, and I think like not, I don't see it as a point of pride. I don't think it makes me better than anyone. I think it might actually probably be dumb, like considering there are aids to like stop you from like having that meltdown. I might actually be kind of ignorant and dumb for not every once in a while at like a level 10 panic attack, like not taking a Xanax and not taking it out on like my family or my friends having to clean up after me or like whatever. But like,
Yeah.
I just like, I think that by not doing it, resisting it as much as you can and white knuckling and just having some grit and determination, like ultimately you don't find that you're white knuckling very much anymore. You don't find that. Like we are talking about the cycles, but like I don't get 10 out of 10 panic attacks anymore. I haven't had one of those since like I've had one in the last 7 years, and I remember it like yesterday. It happened a year ago.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think you've kind of described like this is like God going like, knock, knock, motherfucker. Time to go. Time to get up, bro. 3 weeks later, I took a blood pressure medication because I was so wound up from that like experience to bring me down. So I have taken one drug, no SSRIs, no Xanax, none of that. But I had to because like my heart rate, like I was like sitting heart rate like 140 sitting. I was like 180 over like 120 constantly. Cause after that, I got the fear of God in me. I was like, oh shit, I gotta get to work.
I
And
mean, that's the scariest part of a panic attack is knowing that your body's experiencing an immense amount of pressure. And so,
yes,
like, one, outside of the fact of you're not going to hurt someone or even hurt yourself, like, because people have those panic attacks, but like, also, sometimes you're just scared your body's going to shut down.
yeah,
That's
bro.
my fear was always my body's just going to like, it's gonna pop. I'm either like
Yeah, just lights out.
aneurysm, heart, whatever it's gonna be,
Yeah.
but like, it's everything's moving too fast, and I
You and
know.
I had the same anxiety. It's like my fears. I'm just gonna drop dead right now. Any second, I'm just gonna go.
Just
So you
like
know what happened, LJ?
just
Look at
checking
this.
pulses.
Look at this, baby. Okay, look. I might be. I still got a jowl. I got a little jowl here. But let me tell you,
Yeah, you're no Jocko, but like that's why you're more relatable.
bro. 3 weeks after that fucking panic attack last year, I'm in the gym 5 days a week. I'm powerlifting. I'm eating clean. I'm not eating any processed food. I'm drinking water for the last year, dude. I don't think I've missed a week. I've not gone more than a week without being in the gym and lifting. I mean, I literally went from 120 bench press, right? I'm doing 270 right now. I'm benching over my body weight. Like, and I still got a gut. Like, I went in that I did a DEXA scan the other day, dude.
Yeah.
I went from 54% body fat to 26% body fat in a year,
Dope.
but I only lost 15 pounds. You do like think about that. And it was like, but bro, that's what a panic attack did to me. Like, I find some value in just being sober and feeling those feelings
Yeah.
and going through it. And just like, I don't need weed to have a panic attack. Like, I've heard Joe Rogan one time, he's like, the paranoia, you know, it like keeps me straight. Like it, you know, puts the fear of God in him, right? Like I don't need that. I got like an inbuilt like switch. Like when I'm going down, like something's gonna. Like,
yeah, God pulls that lever. It's like a
for
halftime
4
game
months
speech.
though, I was like having many little panic attacks, like trying to get out of the hole. Cause like, you know, when you drop off the cliff for a second, you know, you gotta like recoup. But like, bro, like I go golfing 3 days a week. I lift 3 or 4 days a week. Like I walk 5 times a day, probably. I like get out and I'll just walk a half mile, come back to my desk, do my work on the phone. Like I've never felt better in my life. And like I have so much confidence in my body. Like my body's not going to just stop.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the COVID shot's going to give me an aneurysm, but like, I don't know. I mean, shit, I took it. I don't know, you know, maybe, but like, that's my only like kind of residual fear day to day with my body. The rest of it's like my blood is perfect. Every condition that I was pre whatever is all gone. You know, I had some fatty liver, it's gone. My enzymes look good. Like every blood test, by every metric, I'm strong again. It's like I like that anxiety kind of goes away. And it's just like,
that's so cool.
I mean, but you have to feel things to address things. I don't think you can mask them. I don't think you want to filter some of that. You got to eat some of it straight up.
Yeah, too much of all of that. It's unfortunately a mask. And then you're just scared to go into test day because you know you have an exam that you don't want to take and it's not, you're going to come out and you're going to fail it. And we got to get more into a pattern of being willing to take that test every day, which is a chest with yourself. It's checking in with yourself. How are we doing? Are we eating right? Are we sleeping right? Are we maintaining the relationships in our life with God and with our family? And when you take that test every day, one, it does get easier. And two, you like the lightness, that thing that you pray, like, can I ever feel good again? You start to live that.
Oh yeah. And you never feel good immediately. It never just like, it's never like that. It's just like
walk before you run for sure.
Bro, I ate some pizza the last 3 days. I've been eating this at Holly's out of town. I'm eating on the same pizza, you know, every day. I'm like, I ordered a couple of like real Cokes with it. That's like my treat. Like, I won't do the high fructose corn. So I'm like, sugar is bad, but it's not as bad as fructose. Like, you know, you convince yourself.
But you're like, Holly's out of town. We're getting some real Cokes.
Bro, I was feeling a little like lightheaded, a little anxious today. I woke up, I was feeling a little wound up, and I was like, I had to take stock. I had to do it. I was like, okay, it's been like 2 or 3 days since I've like looked at what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm just drinking sugar and like eating bread, and I didn't go to the gym. I played golf, but I was in the cart. So like, did I really exercise? You know, and I'm like, and I felt a little like wound up, and I'm feeling that anxiety. And I was able to just look myself in the mirror and be like, yo, this anxiety comes from the fact that you're slightly coming off the rails. We're just gonna course correct right back on. Like, it's no problem. So I went to the store. I went to Costco. I got like 10 pounds of grilled chicken and just grilled it all at one time. Or 10 pounds of chicken, grilled it.
Yeah.
And it's just like that was enough to bring me back in.
Uh-oh. Gotta take baby.
Oh.
Yeah, baby.
But I know you feel what I'm saying. Like, just the process of going to get the clean meat and grilling it was almost enough to bring me back to reality.
Yeah, because your body's realizing that, like, okay, now we're starting to go back to the right space again.
Okay. Yeah, you're not going back down the track. It's not pizza every day anymore. Because trust me, dude, I got up to 280. I'd eat a hamburger for dessert after eating a hamburger. You know what I mean? Like I'd be like, I'm gonna get the double hamburger meal and I get an extra one for dessert. Like
That is
I
so
was
funny.
in that space. Like you
That
know
is
what's bad when you like are like, I'm gonna go keto, so you take the buns off, and then at the end you make a French fry sandwich with the buns and just go all in. Like, you ever been there?
French
Bro, I've
fries
been
with
there.
bun. No, French fries bun. No, but I can tell you, and I still actually we done the last 2 nights. Like hash browns are a thing that I just like love.
Oh,
Like buttered bread and hash
Mm.
browns in any form, my
Mm.
favorite thing in the world.
mm.
Favorite thing. Yeah.
Bro, being in Europe, though, I was just in Belgium a few weeks ago. Like bread with
I'll
4
set that up, Lulu.
ingredients. Bread with 4 ingredients, so much better.
Oh, I'm sure.
I forgot what it was like. I forgot what like bread was like. All these like I see all these like nerdy bakers on Instagram. They're like, I make my own bread, and I'm like, I went to Europe for just like 2 weeks, and I'm like, I bought a bread baker. Like I'm into it. Like I'm really into it. Like I'm like if I'm gonna kill myself, I'm gonna do it with 4 ingredients, not
I
like
am scared we have a bread maker that someone gave us, I think, for our wedding, or it might even been a gift when we got baby. But it's like I am scared that if I open that thing up, I'm gonna go wild for a while.
Bro, you will not stop making bread. I guarantee you.
Yeah, and that's
Like, it's a
that's my
thing.
kryptonite for sure.
My wife doesn't even know the bread maker's on the way, bro. Like I've been experimenting with breads in the oven while she's been gone. Like when that thing gets here, it's over. Like I'm gonna play golf, take care of a baby, and make bread. Like that'll be my whole personality, and that's all you'll know about me. You'll call me, I'll be like, I made the sweet sourdough today, dude.
Just doughboy.
Just doughboy. Dude, she's adorable.
She's
You
the
guys are so
best.
lucky.
Well, Craig, I don't want to take up much more of your time. These are always my favorite types of conversations. I love you, bro.
Dude, I love you too, man. It's been wonderful knowing you, really. And I'm sure the rest of our lives are going to be just as interesting.
We'll continue the journey.
Yeah, dude, we gotta get over here. We gotta get you over here on the East Coast one day.
That's right. We'll get it going.
All right, give my love to everyone. Is how you gonna finish this? Round us off.
Well, what this is you're listening to 37 interviews in 37 days. It's these 37 most influential people in my life, or people that have had great impact over the last 37 years. Just to be able to kind of recenter my focus, reconnect, force people to talk to me for, I always like to abuse my birthday. I used to abuse it in a way of like being able to get everybody together, which I'm also going to do this year. But to just be able to like reconnect. So this is kind of what it's about. I've always appreciated your friendship since literally the first day I've met you, and I'm just excited to be able to continue it. And I want to be able to, put this in a little time capsule so we can look back on it in a few years and laugh about where we were at and thinking that we had any level of understanding of where these kids would take us.
Oh Lord, I could only imagine. It's an honor, LJ. It's an honor to be your friend. I appreciate
it, buddy. Love you.
Take care.
I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, it's 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war.